Well, tensions between President Cyril Ramaphosa and his alliance partner, the Democratic Alliance, reached boiling point when Ramaphosa fired DA Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition Andrew Whitfield for insubordination, after Whitfield travelled to the US without presidential approval. Well, for now, the government of national unity is holding. But what are the implications of this political turmoil? Joining us in the studio is political analyst Professor Theo Venter from Northwest University in South Africa. Hi Theo, nice again to see you.
Yes, absolutely. From a country where it is currently very cold and the political situation is very hot.
Well, from a country where it's very hot and the political situation is hot as well. How's 34 degrees in London for you? That's hot. Well, can you give us a brief summary, just for people who might not have followed it as closely as me and you, of what happened between Ramaphosa and John Steenhuisen, the DA leader?
A few years ago, there was a great movie with the name "It's Complicated." Meryl Streep was playing in it. Now, I think that is probably the best topic for South African politics at the moment. It's complicated because although Whitfield was fired, like you indicated, it only happened 5 months after the event occurred, and it happened in a way which was solvable in many other ways. In other words, what we've seen is an event that brought the government of national unity into its next crisis. It seems to me we have a crisis every 2 months. And the question is, how and what is behind it? And that's what brings about the complicatedness of the story. Was it only a deputy minister that didn't follow the rules? Was it only the presidential prerogative that he can hire and fire as he wishes? Was it the relationship between the DA and the ANC? Or was it internal ANC struggles? Or was it even the effective work of a deputy minister and the deputy president, Paul Mashatile, that it became known over the last week or two that he, or his family at least, his extended family, was the beneficiary of a very, very handsome government tender that runs into millions and millions of rands. And I think it can be all of those things, and it can also be just a few. But let's just take the route that everybody followed. After Whitfield was fired, it was a shock announcement. Nobody expected it last week, and the DA then went and made an ultimatum to the ANC. Now that ultimatum sounded very, very serious. For those listeners that's interested in war and war stories, an ultimatum is the step just before you go to war. So using the word ultimatum was an interesting choice of words. I think it was a little bit overrated if you look at the fallout, but in any case, and the DA gave the ANC 48 hours to respond to the ultimatum. The ultimatum was that due to the fact that Whitfield has been fired and they respected the president's prerogative, but he must then also fire two ministers that is clearly indicated in wrongdoing. The one is the Minister of Higher Education. The other one is the Minister of Human Settlements. In other countries, it would be called the Minister of Housing. And then there was also a Deputy Minister, Mashlobo, that is currently at Water Affairs, that is mentioned in the Zondo report, and so on and so on. And so everybody waited until Saturday afternoon at 3 this weekend. Obviously, the president, it was my expectation, and a lot of others as well, would not respond to an ultimatum. We do not know President Ramaphosa as somebody that acts quickly or that is responding to any crisis in a quick way, and he did exactly that. He acted absolutely to his established style. He didn't do anything, but he cancelled a trip to Spain, an official trip to Spain, in the light of the ultimatum. So it tells you that they expected something to happen that is fairly serious and that needed the president's availability in South Africa, that he shouldn't go on an international trip while the senior partner in the coalition, that we call, of course, the Government of National Unity, is threatening with an ultimatum. So by 3 on Saturday, the president didn't do anything except cancelling the trip, and so the DA had to kind of take the ultimatum into something that they can do, because the president didn't do what they expected. So they made an announcement of, I would say, 4 issues. Firstly, they said, decision 1, they will stay in the Government of National Unity. Decision 2 is that they will not participate in the national dialogue. It's an initiative that has been embarked on where the government wants everybody to participate in a discussion talking about those issues threatening South Africa at the moment, whether it's economic, social, or political. The third decision they took was that they will not support those 2 ministers. The one is housing and the other one is, of course, higher education, in their budget appropriation decisions. Now, the DA already approved the budget. We know that they played a key role in approving the third effort to get a budget going. Now, once you've got a budget, you've got a total budget, and then within the budget, that's the parliamentary process, there are appropriation debates for each and every department, and that must also be approved. So they've decided not to support the ANC in those 2 areas. One area specifically is key, and that is higher education, because the higher education system currently is under severe stress due to the National Student Loan Scheme that isn't functioning, and I am sure they looked into that department, whether the support is necessary or not. And then, of course, they mentioned the 4th point was a motion of no confidence in the president. Now, you and I have discussed the motion of no confidence earlier when the budget wasn't approved. And we now know that if you have a motion of no confidence in a minister, the minister must go. If you've got a motion of no confidence in the cabinet must go. And in both of those cases, the president stays. But if you've got a motion of no confidence in the president, the whole cabinet, the whole executive, that means ministers and deputy ministers, must resign. So that's a fairly strong statement to say that there's a motion of no confidence in the president, which I don't think the DA will get sorted out. They don't have the numbers for that, but it is a threat in any case. So after an ultimatum that did not work, the DA had to work out a different kind of way of doing things. So that is where we are at the moment.
So what do you think really happened here? Was it Ramaphosa actually trying to force a collapse of the GNU, a calculated move, to push John Steenhuisen and the DA out? And was the response from Steenhuisen actually to get Ramaphosa to say, I'm going to fire all of you?
No. It was a move by Ramaphosa, but it was definitely a move within the ANC. Within the ANC, it's well known that members of the ANC to the left and members of the ANC that is not supporting the Ramaphosa presidency in the ANC, and that includes his deputy, they have put severe pressure on the president in terms of his relationship with the DA. And I think this simple mistake that Whitfield made, and we must agree it was a mistake. The rules of cabinet says you cannot leave the country unless you've got the written consent of the head of state. Now, according to Whitfield, he tried for 10 days. He didn't ever get a reaction to it, because it was that time where our relationship with the Americans were on a knife's edge. It was when AfriForum and Solidarity visited Washington and so on. So the DA also sent a delegation. And the interesting part of this delegation was it was in support of the government of national unity. It was not the kind of moan and groan that we had from the other delegations that went there. But in any case, so he made a mistake. Now, the next point here is the presidential prerogative. The presidential prerogative is a constitutional arrangement that provides the president with the powers to hire and fire. But that was designed with a single party in mind. When the Constitution was designed 30 years ago, it wasn't part of the thinking of the originators and the architects of the Constitution that there will ever be a coalition government. Well, 30 years after, we now know we've got one. And there is an arrangement between the parties to participate in the government of national unity, a memorandum of intent, it was called. Now, it is assumed that the president's prerogative applies, but it applies in consultation. It cannot apply as if only one party is ruling the country. And I think that was applied in a very dogmatic way. And I agree on this one. I agree with the DA. There could have been discussions about Whitfield, and there could have been an apology, and there could have been an explanation. All of those things could have been, but it didn't happen because Ramaphosa was forced, in my view, by the left side of his government to make things as difficult as possible for the DA to stay in the government of national unity. So by deciding to stay, it means that for the second time around, the DA has signaled that they will only leave the government of national unity if they were to be kicked out by the ANC or by the other members. And that's not going to happen because the ANC needs the DA, like we've seen in the budget. It needs the DA for several other things. And the DA needs the ANC to be in the executive, which provides a lot of benefits to the DA, although, and we've discussed this also previously, that they're underrepresented in terms of the numbers in Parliament. In Parliament, they're represented by about 22, 23% of the electorate, but if you look in the cabinet representation, it's about half of that. So yes, they're underrepresented. And then the big thing here that I think the DA is now really were not understanding. I think they understood it all the time, but they can now clearly see that their political clout is not to have a few ministers in cabinet or to have a few deputies. Their clout is in the legislature, is the numbers that they represent in Parliament, in the committees. That is where the DA's power lies. And I think that's why the motion of no confidence in the president must be taken serious. It means the DA, in its relationship with the ANC, is going to be a little bit more difficult in Parliament than they have been up to date.
So is there then any point for the DA to stay in the GNU if their power actually lie in Parliament and they have no say at the moment over foreign policy and now trade, unless they nominate another deputy minister? Is there any point for them to stay?
Oh yeah, there's lots of points for them to stay. Firstly, they made a breakthrough in terms of their role in the budget. In other words, where the ANC wanted to have the budget as an absolutely ring-fenced part of policy, the DA is now part of it following the budget approval process. And foreign policy, yes, it is still largely an ANC area of action. They try to keep it out of the hands of the other political parties, but they took John Steenhuisen with to go to Washington, D.C. So that means the DA has some inroads into foreign policy. And I think that is slowly but surely going to happen, where the DA, if I were in their strategic thinking little box, I would apply my power and my political clout in the committee system of Parliament and in the voting in Parliament. You see, once somebody is moved out of Parliament into cabinet or into a deputy ministership, everything changes, because then what determines cabinet is determined by what the president wants. It's a very strict and a very formalized kind of relationship. And I think the DA is doing extremely good work in all of their portfolios, whether it's higher or whether it's education, basic education, whether it's agriculture with Steenhuisen and a few others that we can mention. And that is where the interesting part of this firing of Whitfield comes. In the department where he's a deputy minister, he also played a significant role. He assisted in a number of things. He unlocked a few things. That's the department that will eventually decide how to deal with, for instance, the Starlink business, which sits in another department of communication. But trade and industry will be part of that. How do you structure a foreign investor into the country? And Whitfield played a major role in that. But that department also oversaw a very big contract on the South African lottery system, which was just approved recently. And it now seems as if the deputy president's extended family, I think it's sister-in-law or at that level, was the beneficiary of that tender. Now the president says, or the deputy president says, he hasn't been involved. He recused himself from any of these decisions. But for me, it's just too close for comfort. And it can just be that Whitfield asked a few questions about this. Nobody has said a word about this, and I think they deal with it very confidentially. But I think at one point, the left side of the ANC, or the ANC that is not supporting Ramaphosa, said to him, that deputy minister is becoming a problem. Let's look at something that he did wrong in the past and get rid of him. I think it was as simple as that.
So what could we expect now? More ultimatums from either side, very fragile months. Do you expect the GNU to go on until the next election?
No, I don't expect that. Let me just say something which wasn't mentioned in the media last week. In the haste of the DA to declare an ultimatum, they did not mention the fact that in the communication that the president had with John Steenhuisen, informing him of Whitfield's imminent firing, he also mentioned to him, and please submit to me another name to fill that position. So what comes out of this is also the clear understanding that these portfolios that was given to different political parties, the IFP, the DA, and the Freedom Front Plus, those are then now regarded as, let's say, slots in cabinet that must be filled by that political party. It's not as if the president is going to appoint somebody else. So the DA must, in the next few days, submit a name to the president to fill that position where Whitfield got kicked out. And that will also be a very interesting position to see what the thinking in the DA is about who to send in. Are they going to send in a heavyweight? Are they going to send in a few names came up. One is Dr. Ivan Meyer, which is currently a very senior member of the provincial administration in the Western Cape. He can be a very interesting candidate. Another candidate is somebody that made his mark during the budget, Dr. Mark Burke, that had a very, very interesting impact. He's a young member of parliament, but that is exactly what one would look for. But it will be determined by the federal executive of the DA, and it will show us how they regard this. So they haven't lost the position. They've lost the man, but not the position. And this, I think this week we will see that appointment.
Well, we get to the point of, you said no, the GNU will not hold until the next election?
The next election is 2029. It's a few years off. But there's a crucial three crucial developments that I would like to point out. The one is, and this is now apart from whether Donald Trump is coming to the G20 or not in November. Let's keep that one aside. But in December of this year, 2025, the ANC is having their national consultative conference. Now, that consultative conference, it's not a decision-making body. It's a body that evaluates policy, that evaluates the work of the top 7. But it is usually, in the ANC tradition, also kind of the beginning of the national conference that follows 18 months later. So we will see how the groupings are going to be sorted out. And while I'm saying that, Fikile Mbalula, behind the scenes, are currently working very hard for the Ramaphosa side, and he's doing that by replacing regional structures all over the country. So by replacing regional structures, he is actually preparing the groundwork for the consultative conference in December, because in December, the only people that can attend that conference are ANC branches in good standing. And that's the work of the Secretary General, is to arrange that. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes happening already. That's one. That's the consultative conference. The second important one is the national elections at local government level that will take place, I think, in November next year. There's a period in which it can take place, but I think I wouldn't have an election in December in South Africa. It's too hot. And I wouldn't have it in January. It's too rainy and too hot. November is a very good month. So I think November will be the election. You have to look at the climatic conditions as well, not only the political climate, but the weather patterns. And then the third one is the ANC's leadership election in 2027. Now, if somebody were to ask me, will the GNU hold? I would say yes, it will hold for this year. Towards the local government elections, it will be under severe pressure, because more things like what we've just seen may happen, and political parties will definitely differ from each other. But whether it will hold up to 2027, that I think is the big question. 2029 is outside, I think, the scope of thinking of the government of national unity. 2027, to me, is the hurdle that must be crossed, because here is the history of the ANC over the last 20 years. In a leadership election where you lose the presidency, and Ramaphosa is going to lose the presidency because he has been president for 2 terms, there's no term limit in the ANC's constitution, but there's a term limit at the level of president. And it seems to me the ANC has moved that term limit also into their constitution informally. If somebody else replaces Ramaphosa, the chances of him staying head of state until the election of May 2029 are very, very slim, unless a president is elected that is from the Ramaphosa faction in the ANC. And those guys haven't showed up clearly. They are gossiping about Patrice Motsepe, his brother-in-law. There's gossip about Minister Nchunu, previously of police, currently of water affairs, and so on. But the candidate that everybody's looking at is Paul Mashatile. And if Paul Mashatile becomes president, I don't think Ramaphosa will hold on to power for long.
Do you expect any conciliatory move from Ramaphosa now to the DA?
Well, I think the best thing that they can do is not a national dialogue. I know the national dialogue is promoted by many people, by the churches, by the different institutes, the Katrara Institute, the Mbeki Institute. I think the most important thing now is for the ANC and the DA to go into a kind of a BOSBERAAD, or we refer to it also as an indaba, where people get together over a weekend. All the cell phones are taken away, and you are forced to talk, so that they talk about the statement of intent, that they talk about those things that are currently harping the relationship. And I think out of that can come a much stronger relationship about what to do and what not to do. And the most important issue is to establish a platform where things can be cleared out, a clearinghouse. Now, there is such a mechanism in the office of the Deputy President, but it hasn't functioned. It is not working. It is not doing what it's supposed to do. I think there must be something where the political parties, not only the DA and the ANC, but all the political parties, when new legislation or legislation that will have an impact on policy, when that is debated, to get together outside of Parliament, outside of Cabinet, to have a frank discussion about the ways and the means, and then go into the formal arrangements. Because the moment you're in a formal arrangement in Parliament, it becomes a screaming match. It becomes a madhouse. If you're in Cabinet, you're absolutely formalized. The President is chair, and there's certain routines. But if you can do it informally, in a way where you can have a discussion on equal terms, that is where you can resolve this. That has not happened, and I think that is probably the most crucial thing that must be considered by both the ANC and the DA.
Well, Professor Theo Venter, thank you so much.
My pleasure participating in your program.